From my book, Broken But Restored, Living a Life of Trials to Triumphs. One thing I truly despise is when someone makes a promise and then doesn't do what they said. After our marriage, Henry often made promises to spend time with us as a family, but then would change his mind for some reason or another. I hated being promised something and making plans, then suddenly there's a change of mind. That hurt me so much, especially when he made a promise to the kids. I continued to pray and ask God to help us. Before we moved into our new apartment, we agreed not to allow any drinking or partying in our home. In fact, we said we wouldn't even keep any alcohol there either. Unfortunately, like other promises, soon this one was being broken too. I tried not to let it bother me, but it did. Mostly because when Henry drank, he became very disrespectful towards me, arguing and fighting about everything. I believed a lot of the reason he behaved like this was so he had a reason to escape from home. I kept praying, but it seemed like things just kept getting worse. Sometimes I sought advice from a woman of God at church who would listen and share her problems and testimonies about how God had brought her through. One thing she always said was to keep praying because the enemy would try to make it seem like my prayers weren't working. The devil always tries to plant seeds of doubt about what God can do. I would literally speak to church at times because of what I was going on at home. The only freedom I felt was being in the presence of God. I knew he saw what I was going through and understood my pain. God was my only source of hope and strength. Sometimes family members told me, just leave it alone, and quoted scripture to make it sound like what they were saying was right, but that didn't help. I kept asking God, if your word says that the blessing of the Lord makes us rich and adds no sorrow with it, then why am I feeling so sorrowful about my marriage if it really is from you? Though I questioned the Lord all the time, I was determined to have faith in him. We have dealt with this for many months. Henry would go out with his friends, come home, and go to work, and that was it. I was with the children all the time and sometimes just needed a break. I had stopped going out and clubbing because I didn't believe it was right for me to be in that type of environment anymore. But nothing was changing, and I didn't know what to do with myself. I tried my best to stay in prayer and worship and to keep my mind in God's presence. One night, Henry went out with one of his friends, and when they come back, I asked him not to go back out. I didn't want Henry to get a DUI and lose his job or for something else bad to happen. Most of Henry's friends would do this when I asked, except for this one. When they got up to leave again, Henry assured me that he would be okay, but I had a troubled feeling about it. Henry left to take his friend home, and I went to bed. About an hour later, the phone rang. It was the police who asked if I could come and pick up Henry's car because they were taking him to detox. However, they also said that if he didn't calm down and stop kicking the car, they might have to take him to jail. I still didn't have a driver's license, so my dad drove me out there, but then I still had to drive Henry's car back home. I was surprised when the officer didn't check for my license and think he was just really distracted by how Henry was acting. It was already 2 or 3 in the morning, and then I had to wait until he sobered up before I could pick him up from detox. A lot of the times dealing with domestic violence situations, we deal with substance abuse as well. And alcohol was a very, very big thing for us and why we was fighting. And it may not be alcohol in your situation. It may be drugs. It may be sex. But there's always a root cause to why these types of things go on. And until the person is ready to acknowledge the issues within themselves, you as a person involved with this, you have to make the choice that's better for you. Unfortunately, I didn't make that choice soon enough. And I have to allow myself to forgive myself for the things that I chose not to do when things happen. So if you find yourself in a domestic violence situation, I genuinely ask that you reach out to these resources, get that restraining order, and change your life. You won't regret it. You'll miss the person because the good times that you guys had, and that's okay. But the toxicity of it, you don't deserve. Neither do they. And so I pray that you guys learn how to be free and stay free.